Real Talk with Tina and Ann. I am Ann, and we have a guest today. Many of you might recognize her. Denise Bard has been on many times. It's been a while, though. She has been out promoting her book, 30-Second Moments and the Women Who Raised Me. She has been speaking and doing all the things. She had a life of fear, and she is working hard to overcome and to help others. Denise, you and I both know what it's like to live our lives as if we are afraid of pretty much everything.
True.
To give just a little bit of a backstory, I had several times in my life, very young, had the wind knocked out of me. Fear entered me before I was even school age. So, I mean, that really affects you. Being in foster care young and adopted young, that really affects somebody, but I think that that can affect anybody at any age. I
Mm.
believe you can sense when something is not right. When the adults in the room are scared, the kids can pick up on that. And I was adopted as a baby, but it was a little bit strange of a situation. It was somewhat normal until my dad passed away, even though, I lived in a house where my mom was abusing my sister next door to me in her bedroom every night just about. And that can really affect a person when you're listening to somebody else being abused in the next room. Because I was a child when all that happened, I think that that put a fear in me that I can't describe. I was afraid of success. I was doing great at the time. I was at the top of my game in everything. I'm talking popularity, fun, swimming, friends, just everything. I was just at the top of my game. And I think that that brings a fear in someone that you just can't let go of when everything bad happens in an instant, when everything is going really good in your life. Someone recently said to me, "How did you smile after your dad died?" Because I was so young.
Yeah.
And I said, "I faked being happy most of my school years." When you realize that young, that things can change so abruptly on a dime. Like one moment you are fine, and the next moment you no longer have a dad, and the next moment your mom is giving your sister to the system, and bam, you're on this 6-week trip across the country. We visited like almost every state in the United States, and I never knew what hotel room we were going to be staying in or where we were going to land next. And it was really kind of a scary situation. You would think that people would be like, "Oh, that sounds like a great vacation." But I didn't, and it felt like my mom was on the run, and she was on the run. And I don't really want to go into all of that right now, but it was because of a negative situation that she was on the run. But looking back, no wonder I was afraid.
Yeah, I think I've spent the
Mm.
beginning of life exactly the same way. Uncertainties made you afraid. You didn't. My backstory of mine too is that I was born to two drug addicts when I spent my childhood with my mother, who became a cocaine addict, and so the uncertainty there, where unfortunately, things happened to me where there was a lot of abuse, the worst abuse, taken. You never knew where you were going to go, what was going to happen. So you do live on eggshells, which creates that fear. And
Mhm.
then, the trust
Yes.
of other people. You're afraid to trust people because you don't know, number one, you don't know if they're safe. And number two, if you do feel that they're safe, you don't know how long they're going to be there. So you don't know what you're going to do. And as a kid and a child growing up in that,
Hmm.
there's different things coping that I went through with the fear of abandonment. Very afraid of
Oh my
abandonment.
gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
and it's funny because even as an adult, I have some of these issues that continue with the abandonment. As an adult, where you logically know some of these things, you hold on to that fear. And I've like held on to that, started therapy to hopefully, work on that even at an older age. But those things that you got into a routine of, it becomes comfortable. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's the comfort zone because
Yeah.
that's where you know how to live. It's the fear of what you don't know, the good things. Like you said, you are so afraid of something happening that you miss out on that joy because you know you're locked into the fear of the unknown. And I spent a good, I mean, well, I spent my whole childhood, even going through school. I know you said that, you were at the top of of the game. For me, I never felt that way. I was always afraid to
Mm,
show what was happening at home, that I had two separate lives. I lived the life of fear at home with the unknown, navigating
mm,
the everyday of walking on eggshells. I was physically abused, sexually abused. Um, I guess you could say trafficked when I was younger, um,
mhm,
which again brings that fear. But you live on those eggshells at home. And then when I went to school, I was afraid to let anybody know what was going on at home. And you're trying
mhm,
really hard to fit in, but you're trying with that fear with you. So
mhm.
but it becomes so normal to you that it sounds crazy to say that it was, like you said, a normal, but it's something you knew how to navigate versus something else. So you live truly, that's your identity. I hate to say that it was
Mhm.
almost an identity because like you put up the fake facade, but really you were living in the identity of fear.
Well, what's interesting is I said the top of my game, but it was a top of my game that I was used to.
Mm.
I mean, I think as a child, I had been through so much abuse and I had listened to so much abuse and, you know, with my sister, that even when it was good, somebody else would have considered that bad.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
what's really interesting to me, that I even think that what was the top of my game was my swimming. I
Mhm.
did have friends. I was at the best I could possibly be, which to some might not, because I was autistic and I still had verbal problems and academic issues and like all the things, but I was able to be my best self.
Yeah.
And then the rug was ripped, from under me when my dad passed away. And then when my sister was given away, I can remember that day. So, like, it just happened. It lives in me.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to be bad after that. You
Were you
know,
afraid that you were going to be put in there as well? Like you were going to go
yeah,
in?
because she made me believe that the reason why she gave my sister away was because of her behavior.
Mm.
It was really her. It had nothing to do with my sister. It had
Yeah.
everything to do with this woman who was raising me. But my fear, and I had already been adopted, right? So,
Right.
I mean, I had already been in the system. So I knew, even though I was a baby at the time, I think that that's something that never leaves you. You always know when you've left your biological mom and you've been in other homes and then you're being put into another home. I just think that you instinctively, you know it.
Hmm.
Living in fear is something that I think that I did every single day, even though I was my best self, like I said. So that day, just to kind of talk about it a little bit, and I don't really talk about it that much on the podcast, but just as a backstory, when my mom said to me that she's going to be going somewhere, a relative's house for a short time, she said that to my sister, you're going to be going for a short time. But she told me she's never coming back, and you're not allowed to tell her. So you want to know, I was only a few years older than her. And we had
Yeah.
both just gone through something so horrific with our dad passing away, that I don't know. It's just something that I've never been able to shake.
Well, as a child, you don't know how to, I don't think we can comprehend and to um, really process something like that, along with not just the death, but that situation that you were in. I I often think of and you and I have talked, and I know about your story, and it's
Yeah.
something that's interesting every time. Like I hear that, I think of a cousin of mine who is she's about 6, 7 years older than me. And she was the only person in my family that not knew what was happening, but knew something bad was happening. And I've had people say, well, why didn't she do anything? I'm like, how can you do something when you're a child yourself, regardless if
Mm-hmm.
you're only a couple years older?
Mm-hmm.
What can you do? You are in a
You feel
position
so
where,
helpless. You feel
correct.
so helpless.
Yes. And I felt the same. And my cousin has said that to me. And I'm like, and I don't know if she said that one because it's true, but also maybe there is some guilt. Like, should I've done something? And I always say, there is nothing you could have done. Nothing. I can't take that. I appreciate that at the times that she looked after me because,
Mm-hmm.
that was a genuine thing. Um,
Right.
but as a child expecting you to do something, I don't know if in my position I would have done anything different. I don't think I could because I was afraid.
Well, we were kids. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's a thing. But I think that I owned a lot of what my mom was doing,
Oh, yeah.
and even in conversations that I've had with my sister many, many years later, unfortunately, I think that because of the things that she went through, and I don't blame her. I think that she kind of wrapped me in the whole package, and
Yeah.
I was a part of it. So but I have never, in fact, when I do my podcast, her picture that she drew me of us being sisters is behind me, behind my green screen here. I've got things around my house that are a memory of her. I've got a whole thing of the two of us, different pictures of us, because it's like this podcast to me is in honor of our,
Yeah.
relationship as kids and in memory of who we could have been, you know,
Yeah.
and what I wish that we could have been. I'm constantly doing this for her. Because
Yeah.
you know why? Because we didn't have a voice when we were kids. And
Mm.
I wanted her to have a voice. And so
Yeah.
that was just really important to me. One of the things that really stood out to me at that time, though, was that I was not allowed to tell. I was
Yeah.
not allowed to tell. And when
You're
you're
silent.
silenced,
Yeah.
that puts a whole nother layer on it. I felt that I was lying to the world. And I can remember being in this school gym the next school year, right after it had happened, because it was in the summertime, and then we were in the school gym, and it was seventh grade, and a teacher asked me how my sister was because nobody was seeing her.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, my sister's not there anymore. How strange is that? I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't answer because I couldn't answer. I didn't want to lie,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to say. But I realized then that I had lost the voice that I had had. I mean, I didn't have a great one because of being autistic on top of it,
Yeah.
but the little bit of voice that I had was gone. And
Yeah.
I really was mute for quite a while after that. So it was crazy how my fear came out.
I talk about this in my speech, and I think I talk about it in the book. Silence is a prison. You
Yeah.
are silent because you're trained to be silent.
Yeah.
The fear of silence. And it's interesting.
Hmm.
I have all around me, I have pictures, and these are the pictures of the women I talk about in my book, and they're the teachers and the my casework
Mm.
counselor from a group home shelter. Half of them didn't know. They never did know. I always say that they were moments of connection that they still helped me, even though they didn't know. But I had this fear, even though they made me feel safe in moments, you are stuck, like stuck in fear of losing them, fear of them not believing you, fear of you being told that, well, that's your fault anyway.
Hmm.
I think that that does trap us. That puts us in this prison because
Hmm.
those bars represent the fears that are in you for each different thing. That's how I looked at it. It was like each bar represented why I'm afraid. And so,
Hmm.
even though I could see past that bar, I could not for the life of me say anything. But it was the idea of things happening, the anxieties that cause these fears too.
Hmm.
you don't know what to do. Like you said, your sister, it was an anxiety of like, I can't tell. Like, I'm anxious. Who's going to ask me? I started to almost pretend that my life at home was not the reality. Like a lot of relatability is how I can say I didn't go through the exact things you did.
Right,
But a
but we
lot
can relate.
of these feelings of fear, of anxieties, they are so relatable.
When you were talking, I realized that when you feel like you've got this huge secret and you can't talk and tell anybody, I think that that was part of the reason that my muteness in that situation it transferred into other areas of my life. I mean, when you've got something that's so heavy on you and you're not
Mhm.
allowed to tell anybody, it silences you in that area. But I think that that silenced me, period. I had someone who knew my mom pretty well. That's another side of it. She was very well known in the community. And I would say most people outside in the community would have said she was a great woman.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so that's confusing
Yeah.
because you've got all these people saying, oh, she's a really great person. But behind closed doors at home, it was a different story.
Yeah.
And so I had to be silenced in that situation because whenever I would tell, or if I would think about telling somebody, I just couldn't tell them really what was going on because I honestly don't think that anybody would have believed me.
Yeah. I felt the same.
And when she told me, this woman told me that my mom loved me, I was like, I couldn't receive it because there's just no way that she could have loved me the way I think that I love my kids.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, I how in the world could she have even thought that she loved me like her own kid? I don't know because you just don't do that. I've adopted all of my kids and I just don't understand what she did to a young 8-year-old child, my
Yeah.
sister, and put on me as an 11-year-old. And I was never able to rid of that fear until the day she died. So
Mhm.
that tells you
Yeah.
what an influence that she had on me. Even if people want to say, oh, well, you just made too much out of that. My body knew the
Yeah.
moment she died that I was free.
I feel the same way. I I lived back and forth between my mother and my grandmother, and a cycle of abuse was always there. Walking on the eggshells, always afraid, never knowing what's going to trigger someone, how, what's going to be the response to you. And my grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and it was funny. And I know this is kind of hard because there were good times. Um,
Mm,
Elementary school trips is what I can remember, that people wondered, how did you not cry? And I'm like, because I got free. Now, my mother's still living, but I don't talk to her. So there's a freedom there.
mm,
But I want to say this. You talked about how, somebody said, oh, they loved you. I had the same experience where I
mm,
tell you what, I did not know love until I was 14 years old. 14 years old, two things happened to me. And again, I talk about this in my book. I go into a little bit detail and I talk about this when I go and I speak to teachers because they were the ones who raised me. My counselor she was my caseworker and counselor at the shelter group home that I was in, and she is still in my life since I was 14. She has never left. She was the first person to teach me, to show me what genuine unconditional love is. The first person who gave me a hug that I wasn't afraid of, that I didn't have those fears inside of me, that when she hugged me, it felt like every fear, everything melted away, and I was the safest I could possibly be. But
mhm,
she was the first person to help me understand what unconditional love was. So I understood at that moment, I wasn't getting that at home. I didn't feel
mhm,
it at home, but it validated to me that I really wasn't getting that. And then
mhm,
another thing happened again that year with another teacher who said something to me that went unnoticed by her. She didn't realize that simple moment of connection did something and helped me to see. She introduced me to someone as her Denise. It wasn't what she literally meant, but it was just that simple moment, those simple words
Mm-hmm.
connected with me. And for the first time, I felt wanted. It helps to validate things and it helps to free you from a bit of the fear. But again, I was so trapped that even with the women who made the difference in my life, I was still afraid to say things.
Well, when my mom actually passed away, I was in the room
Mm,
and the nurse was there. And, normally the daughter goes and holds hands with
it,
their mom when they're passing away. I couldn't do that. I couldn't. Well, I was not a touchy-feely person anyway. I don't
yeah,
normally like touch people. It's just a
right.
thing. There's only probably a couple people in my cat, my animals, and that I really hold close to me.
Yeah,
And other than that, I just don't touch people. And so she was obviously gonna pass, and the nurse was in the room, and she noticed that I wasn't fulfilling that,
yeah,
So
that role.
she went up and she held my mom's hand, and then she passed away. And then she's like, "Well, do you need anything?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. What do I need to do? Do I need to sign the papers? What do I need to do?" And it
Yeah.
was like, bam, signed the papers, walked out.
I have the same thing. Like I have that fear. I almost vomit anytime my mother would touch me, but I had to pretend that it still
Mhm.
didn't bother me. But and I'm okay
Wow.
with, like, I was never okay with hugs. I pretended that I liked them, but I wasn't okay until I met Michelle and she gave me that hug. And then like you said, there were certain people where you felt comfortable enough to do that. I don't know that I would have been able I wasn't there when my grandmother passed away. They called me. Um, I was power of attorney. Well, I was secondary and they couldn't get in touch with the first. So they called me and I remember just being so calm about it. It wasn't like you weren't totally upset.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I was sad. And I think the same thing. They probably thought, what the hell? But I'm like, but they don't know. I don't think I could have held her hand either.
You know how time is divided.
Yeah.
People would have known me before my mom passed away. They would have known a different Anne.
Yeah.
And if they knew me from her last breath up until now, they would see a person who lives with a lot less fear. And I honestly, back then, I was so needy because I didn't realize my fear got in the way of me being able to do a lot of the things in life that I should have been able to do naturally.
Yeah.
But, well, it took many years to get here. But I show up now. I say yes now without fear, which is crazy. Before, as soon as I tasted success, I would back out because I associated success with my dad's death and everything that happened after that. But now I'm ready for it. It's just so interesting the process that it took to get here. But yeah, I'm just not that person anymore.
I'm still working on it. I know, believe it or not, even though like I've written a book and I still talk, I I have this fear of failure, of failing myself, of failing
Yeah.
others, of this fear of judgment, of
Mm,
the fear of what other people will think, because my identity felt like I was identifying myself as the person who is afraid all the time.
hmm.
So I'm learning who I am now. I'm learning to have a little
Okay,
bit more courage, and I'm allowing the me that had always been inside of there to come out slowly
uh-huh,
but surely. And I am working
right.
on letting that fear go. I just started therapy again because I'm at the age where I don't want to say time's running out because I'm younger. I'll turn 50 in March. I don't want to end my life in fear. I want to have the courage. I watch everybody go out and do things like we're friends. I've watched, I see things that you're doing on with your family, and I want to be there. I want to be able to have that um freedom, I guess, but I want to be able to just be me. and not be afraid of being me because I'm afraid of that failure. I'm afraid. Again, I go out and I talk. I'm fine talking about it. I wrote the book. I'm fine writing the book. But something that happened in therapy yesterday was, so what do you need me for? Because it seems like everything's going well for you. And I said, that's the problem. You
Hmm.
see the outside, but on the inside of me, I'm afraid. I have
Right.
anxiety. I want to
Right.
learn how to let that go so that I can authentically be me and not be
Right.
identified by the old me, the kid that was trying to survive, getting
Mm.
through school and trying to do all things because that was me. So now I'm slowly coming out of that shell. I'm slowly learning to not be afraid
Right.
of as many things, but with mental health, I
Right.
had to say, okay, this is the time because I don't want to die being afraid. I won't don't want to miss out on joys that I want to
Yes.
inside do.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm older, sometimes I wish that I would have started this journey, way many years ago.
Yeah.
But, I've had I don't know, I don't feel like I've missed out because I've really been living fully, you
Yeah.
know? And if I would have not ever done this, then I would have felt like I missed out. I'm reading a book called Game On by Dannenfelser. It is such an inspirational book. One thing she says is dreams do come true if you believe in your ability to achieve them.
Oh.
And for some reason, I know why I lost my ability to dream and I lost my ability to believe in myself.
Hmm.
But, I really did think that I was a loser and that was my path. It's
Yeah.
really sad that that's where I was
I
for
think
such
there's
a
a lot
long
of people.
time.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of people that may be listening that feel that way. And
Right.
again, I'm right there with you. Again, I'm a little older now. I don't want to feel that way about myself. And I won't say for me it was a loser. It's just I feel like a failure. I just feel like people that didn't expect me to be where I'm at, and I'm living a life that I never was supposed to live. I just
Hmm.
wasn't supposed to have where I'm at. And so
Right.
I don't want to say that, I haven't made some great strides and I have this beautiful life that is not like the life I had when I was growing up. But I think that there's so much more to have
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
not in a selfish way, but it's a
Hmm.
personal way to
Hmm.
be able to, like you said, enjoy things and not be afraid of that success and being more confident in myself. That's that fear too, that you're not
Hmm.
confident enough. For me, I think I'm constantly going to work on it, but my hope is that I continue to better being more confident and being letting go of that fear that keeps me from doing all the things. And there's small things. Be
Hmm.
the smallest thing, the
See,
everyday victories. I just want to be able to do that and not be afraid to do it. So
yeah, unless you've gone through it, you
yeah.
don't realize even doing those small things, going and enjoying things with your family and doing things without fear. People that, normally take for granted, you just don't even pay attention to it because you've never maybe felt that
Yeah.
internal fear that's so deep that, every step you take, everywhere you go, every person that you meet, you're afraid. And
Yeah.
that is really causing this wedge between you and the rest of the world and you being able to, become your best self. Or, be able to show your best self to other people and they see you as this really timid, scared person. So it's really interesting that
Yeah.
you can become somebody that you've never been before and you didn't even realize that you could become this person just
I
because that fear isn't there anymore.
Yeah, I heard this. I just heard this about 3 days ago. I heard this and I don't remember who said it. It was a motivational speaker. He was like, you have to learn to live and be joyful for the micro victories. There's those little
Mm-hmm.
victories every day. So stop waiting
Right.
for the big victory to happen. That'll come. But you have
The-
to look at yourself and say you made these little victories every day past the fear. So they're
Yeah.
micro victories. And I started putting that in my head because I'm like, oh, let's be happy that I made this little success today. And I wouldn't have done it yesterday. This is my little victory today, to come out of that identity of fear.
I believe that that path that I was going on kept all the positive things out, you
Yeah.
know, and I allowed people to treat me badly because I thought that that's what I deserved. It was what I knew. It was
Yeah.
what I knew. I allowed myself to stay in relationships way longer than I should have. Even though I knew a person was abusing me, I knew that this wasn't right, but I stayed. And Tina and I have touched on this in our last episode. And honestly, I don't know why I did it, other than the fact that I believed that that was my path.